There are, lots of kind of themes that emerge from all of these movies you mentioned in the book, Frank. Sticking with Star Wars, though, one thing, again, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the original set of films, but it turns out that Darth Vader is Luke's dad, Anakin Skywalker, and the ultimate baddie kind of eventually kind of finds redemption in the final film. Just explain those scenes for those who maybe haven't seen them, Frank, and what you draw out there about how that connects as far as you see it with the Christian story.
Well, it turns out, and Paul could probably speak more authoritatively on this than I can because he's on the inside of these Star Wars films, and my son is a real expert on the films, but as I see Darth Vader, Luke is his counterpoint. Whereas Darth Vader, well, first of all, Anakin, he is controlled by fear and his emotions, whereas Luke is able to control fear and control his emotions and do what's right. Even in the final scene where Luke is trying to redeem his father and the Emperor try and get him to lose his composure and to totally go off and join the dark side. But Luke continues to pull himself back. He can control his fear. He can control his emotion. And Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, couldn't do that. And it's ultimately what led him to become Darth Vader. Yet Luke has faith that he can turn his father. And of course, Darth Vader says, it's too late for me, son. I can't do the voice.
You need to do that.
Yeah, right.
You need that muffled, heavy breathing if you're going to do Darth Vader,
That's
don't
right.
you, Frank? Yeah. But carry on.
That's right. But Luke will not give up, and he ultimately is able to help redeem his father. And we have a question in the book Hollywood Heroes: can bad people go to heaven? Somebody like Darth Vader, and of course, in the Star Wars series, there is an afterlife. Darth Vader appears in a kind of a trilogy.
Yoda's there,
and with Obi-Wan.
Yoda,
and who else is he? Who's the other one he appears with,
so Yoda
Paul?
and Obi-Wan kind of who.
Yoda,
sort of,
that's right.
It's like Jedi come back as these kind of ghostly type figures after they've died, don't they?
That's a whole mess,
appear
but
to
yeah,
people
some of them.
and guide them. Some of them. Oh, okay. you know more about this than me,
in
Paul.
fact,
Go
Paul,
ahead though.
As I understand it, Paul, Lucas went back and actually digitally put.
Yeah, so he put. Yeah, it was initially Sebastian Shaw, I think his name was the original actor. Anyway, yes, Hayden Christensen, good Canadian boy. They inserted him back into Return of the Jedi, which became a bit problematic because it was old Obi-Wan and young Anakin. So now I'm curious, after this Obi-Wan series, if we're going to get another revision. Maybe it'll be Ewan McGregor in there now. I'm not sure, but.
Well, you make an interesting point about this, Frank, that maybe there's a rationale, if there is a rationale, for why they changed the Darth Vader Anakin character in that final scene where he appears, sort of as a sort of redeemed sort of soul almost. He's back in his youthful state, which perhaps suggests he's back to his kind of pre-evil innocence phase or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, he's redeemed, and this reminds me anyway of the Transfiguration. So there's an afterlife, and it eerily looks like that, the Transfiguration. But the real interesting thing is, we answer the question, can bad people go to heaven? And the answer is only bad people go to heaven. Because anyone is redeemable, because you don't gain salvation by moral success or lose it by moral failure. It's all grace. And so once Darth Vader decided that he had had enough of the Emperor and he was going to side with Luke, he was redeemed. And there is an afterlife.
It's works-based, of course.
So that's kind of, in a sense, it's the story of redemption told in the Star Wars kind of mode. Now, obviously, he doesn't turn to Christ to have his sins forgiven. It's kind of some kind of, I've turned to the light side from the dark side kind of motif going on. But I suppose, that theme is there, isn't it? This idea that even bad people, even someone as awful as Darth Vader, in his final moments, he receives redemption. And somehow we're okay with that, aren't we? And that's interesting. Paul, what's your feeling on this idea of the salvation ultimately of Darth Vader and how it might relate to the Christian story?
One can draw the afterlife connections. Those are obvious in the Star Wars universe. It's actually very much a works-based system on who gets to live afterwards. There's no one you put your trust in. The interesting thing about Luke, and you were saying Luke with the fear, and I'm preaching on the wrong side of this here, but that's fine. Luke was connected with people. Luke had a connection with Leia and with his friends. that Anakin didn't have. Anakin felt like he was betrayed by everyone, and that he lost all of his friends, and it was this loss of connection ultimately that made Anakin go to the dark side, as opposed to, Luke, who found his family, right, his selected family. And so, I think those could be drawn to Christian themes, I'm sure, as well. Frank has great ways of connecting all these stories to Sunday school type lessons. But again, I kind of, if I'm arguing on the naturalistic side of things, these are the kind of things that people do find, their redemption in, that you put others before yourself, and that, in an altruistic social species, that is considered a great virtue, whether with or without a God. That altruism and finding your family and love, are things that we humans value.
But how is that explained, Paul? Why would altruism be something that a naturalistic worldview would find valuable if altruism doesn't help you survive, or altruism doesn't help you propagate your genes? Like, for example, the example we use in the book is Michael Monsoor, who a true life Navy SEAL who dove on a grenade to save his friends. We all know that's a wonderful, noble act he did, but it doesn't make sense on the naturalistic worldview.
It didn't help his genes survive, but it helped his tribe's genes survive, right? It helped his two fellow servicemen lived because he jumped on that grenade versus just his own. I mean, we as a society, because we rely on each other, it doesn't need to be our own genes that survive. We're a social species, and that's where we find those answers, and that's where the cooperation is what we end up valuing, because that's the only real advantage that humans have over other animals. We have our intelligence and we have our ability to work together. And that's why, in a naturalistic view, I don't need anything more transcendent than to say that my tribe is better off when people give more to it than they take from it.